Mindfulness is being used more and more to help people with the daily stresses of their jobs. And interestingly, we're seeing more training happening in the school systems that help people as they are learning about those roles. Hi, my name is Ted Meissner, and welcome to Mindfulness Voyage. Today we're going to be exploring how mindfulness shows up in one particular university program, helping lawyers deal with the stresses of their daily jobs. Again, please do remember to hit the subscribe button. That is a free way for you to be able to support this podcast if you're interested in the topic of mindfulness and how it's showing up in the world. Our guest today is Thomas Telfer. Thomas, welcome to the podcast. Good to meet you.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
I'm so glad you could join today, and maybe we could start off by just having you say a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, I'm a professor at Western University, which is located in London, Ontario, Canada. I'm a professor of law, and I've been an academic for about 30 years. And my main research interest has been in the fields of bankruptcy, commercial law, contracts, and I've taught those courses. But I've also developed an interest in mindfulness education.
Wonderful. And that's really what we're here to unpack. So, one of the things that I noticed in doing a little bit of research for this conversation is your own story and what brought you to mindfulness. So, if you're willing to share with the audience, could you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, mindfulness, I think I've written before, found me. I didn't seek it out. Uh, I think about 11 years ago now, I was hospitalized for depression and anxiety. And it was a voluntary program of a period of about 8 weeks. And I arrived at the hospital and received a schedule. And I noticed on the schedule, there were things that I expected, like occupational therapy, recreational activity, group therapy, appointments with doctors, all the things you would expect. And then I noticed that on the agenda was something called mindfulness. And I'd actually never heard of the concept before. And I was really puzzled by it. And I soon discovered in the first mindfulness class is participants sat in a circle and were breathing, and I thought it was a waste of time. I actually rejected the concept, thinking, how was I going to get better by simply breathing? But over the period of the 8 weeks, I slowly began to see the benefits of mindfulness. And out of hospital, someone introduced me to an organization called Mindfulness Without Borders. It's now the Global Minds Collective. And I ended up taking facilitator training with Mindfulness Without Borders. And I thought maybe I could end up offering this to law students because I think law students experience a great deal of stress and anxiety. And if it helped me, then I thought if I could just reach a small number of students, I'd achieve my goals. So I ended up starting a non-credit mindfulness course that ran as an optional course. And because of the success of that course, I introduced my own upper year credit course in 2019.
Outstanding. And one of the things that I want to focus on here for a moment is that you came into this with what I think is a terrific outlook, one of skepticism and being uncertain. What is this stuff? And finding that doing the practice itself, you started to notice some of the effects that can happen that can be helpful to people, that you don't have to go into it eagerly enthusiastic about mindfulness, but approaching this with a how do I know this is so mindset is also one that can be very helpful because you get to put it into practice yourself and see what it's like. So thank you for your willingness to share about that.
Not a
And
problem.
your course. Now, tell us a little bit more about that structure. That's what it initially brought me to this as your course and then research as well. Tell us a little bit about the course.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, 2017, I introduced this non-credit course based on Mindfulness Without Borders materials. And I started thinking, well, students are benefiting from a non-credit course. Maybe I could offer an upper year credit course. And I received a teaching fellowship from Western, which provided me with funding to do research. And I discovered that a number of American law schools had offered credit courses in mindfulness. So I was inspired by these American courses, and I wrote to several professors, and they were willing to share with me their course outline. And yeah, I pitched this as a credit course at Western, and it was approved, and began offering in 2019. It's now been offered. I think it'll be the seventh time I offer it in the fall this year. And the course requires students to have a minimum of 10 minutes a day guided meditation. And the course covers a number of concepts. Obviously, an introduction to mindfulness. And I've used the book The Anxious Lawyer for students to read to get a great introduction to mindfulness for lawyers. But I wanted it to be more about than just mindfulness because it's a 13-week term, and we can't just talk about mindfulness all the time. Although I did incorporate mindful listening, mindfulness and legal ethics, mindfulness and negotiations in the course. But I also wanted to include other topics. So one of the topics that I include is mental health in the legal profession, because the legal profession in Canada and the US and other countries is really dealing with a mental health crisis. And surveys show that lawyers are dealing with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And I want to make students aware of that so that they're aware of the what's going on in the profession before they enter the profession. But I also include things like emotional intelligence, because I think emotional intelligence fits really well with mindfulness in that mindfulness is more about a personal practice, whereas emotional intelligence is how you relate to other people. And if you're being mindful, you won't have that automatic reaction, an angry reaction. You'll have a more reasoned response. So I wanted to expose students to the literature on emotional intelligence as well. Multitasking and single tasking. I want to introduce students to that. And that I think we're losing the ability to single task. And also focus and concentration, because mindfulness, one of the benefits of mindfulness is improving focus and concentration. So I have a week on that as well.
Great. And can you tell us what some of the feedback you've heard about the course is? And then if we can go into the research as well, because I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, the feedback's been very positive. You know, I've had students reach out to me from practice after they've graduated and say that they're still practicing and still using the concepts from the course, and that's really beneficial. And the students are required in the course to submit a weekly journal of about 500 words, and just to see how their practice is going and reflect on the readings, and the feedback from that's been very, very positive.
Great. And how about the research? How did that come about?
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, um, one of my colleagues at Western, Emily Nielsen, and I thought we do a research study on mindfulness in law students, and we would do surveys. We'd survey students at the beginning and we'd survey students at the end. But we tried unsuccessfully for 2 years to get a number of students to sign up, and it was just the pool wasn't big enough. So then we switched to, well, what if we did a qualitative study and analyzed the final journal? And the final journal they submit asked students to reflect on the course. And so we gathered two other mindfulness researchers, Ellie Weisbaum and Sarah Kahoot, and the four of us worked on a qualitative study analyzing the final journal submissions. And the existing research shows that mindfulness can help with mental health and depression, anxiety, and focus and concentration. So we wanted to know what the students said about those topics. And the study, after analyzing all the data, reveals that it had significant impact on student mental health. And a lot of students talking about reducing stress and anxiety. Beyond that, students said they were more focused, they had better concentration, they were more productive, getting things done quicker than they otherwise were, that they were single tasking rather than multitasking. And so students also reported that they were using their phone differently than they were using it before. Putting it in another room, for instance, when they're trying to get work done, was the emphasis on single tasking. And also better communication skills, skills that relate to the practice of law. And we were really pleased with the research. And it's now been published by UBC Law Review, came out in June rather of 2025. And the results are there for everyone to read.
Terrific. And for those who are watching, we do have links to that here, where links are found for this episode. Thomas, I just have one more question for you before I let you get on with the rest of your day. As you reflect on the results from what the students have put in their reflections on the course and your own personal journey with mindfulness, what are some things you might say to those who are encountering depression, stress, anxiety? What's something you might encourage them with?
Yeah, what I would say, given my own journey, is that things can get better, that you might be struggling right now and you might be struggling for a little bit longer, but things can get better. And one thing I learned from mindfulness is hope and a real positive experience of mindfulness. But it requires a lot of different tools, consultation with medical professionals, sometimes medication. But mindfulness is, as we say in the paper, is just one prong in terms of the solution for those dealing with mental health issues.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for those of you who are watching or listening, again, we'll have some links where links are found. Our guest today, Thomas Telfer. Thomas, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being here, everyone. And please do remember to tap that subscribe button. It helps make sure that other people can find this podcast as well. And remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. And I'll see you next time on Mindfulness Voyage.